Hey all, Vendrick here. Welcome back to Build Your Own Bucket Server, episode 3. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about plugins. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of depth, but basically I'm going to talk about the plugins that I feel are pretty much essential for most multiplayer bucket servers that you're going to have people joining into. First thing I'm going to just show you is the easiest, quickest way to find the plugins. If you know the plugins you want, I'm going to give you the list here of the ones that I think most servers should have. There's thousands of them out there. You're going to need to go through, see what people recommend, see what people don't recommend. When new ones come out, try to figure out what you need, what you don't need. The way I normally do it is if I know the plugin I want, I'm going to go to my Google search up here, and I'm going to do bucket, and then I'm going to say the one that I want. In this case, let's say Chest Shop. That's going to come up and it's going to tell me, okay, Chest Shop bucket. Let's go in there. A little bit of description about what the actual plugin does. In this case, simple yet powerful system for making physical shops. If you look down the recent files, you can see version 3.5, test version 4, and 1.4.6 RO3. So that's the version of Bucket this one is developed and tested for. The previous one is for 1.4.6 RO2. So depending on the version of your server you're running, you're going to want to download the version of the plugin that is designed for that version of the server. Most cases, you're going to keep your server up to date as much as you can, so you'll be downloading the latest version. So you're just going to go to download, and it's going to give you the list here, and you're going to see the file name, which one it is. That's the default, the one they say you should be getting. If you want another one, you can click on it from the list below on the previous page. Click on download here, save file. You save it to your plugin folder, in this case, computer, my E drive, my YouTube bucket, plugins folder, and then I just hit save. It's going to download that, and it's going to put it here in my bucket folder. Now I already have Chest Shop here, different version, and I pretty much generally will generalize my plugin names just so they're not all covered with all the numbers. So if you see all my plugins I've listed here, I've removed all the versioning and whatnot just to keep it clean. And so it's easy to see, easy to know what plugin you're dealing with. I'm just going to delete this one here because I don't want Chest Shop twice, of course. So just get rid of that. So now I'm going to move on to the plugins that I think are kind of essential for your bucket server. Some you may agree with, some you may disagree with. You may say, why didn't you add this one? Why did you add this one? These are pretty much the ones that I know, the ones that I trust, the ones that I've used. Now, there are other plugins that I use that I'm not going to put here because they're not essential. They make things fun, make things better. And I'll get into those in future with, well, once we've got the essentials, where do we go from there? So let's just start off. The first one here, Chest Shop. Basically what Chest Shop is, in a nutshell, it allows your players to put down a chest, put a sign on it, use specific syntax, which I'll get into when I talk about Chest Shop more specifically, and they can buy and sell items using currency. We'll get into where the currency comes from as we go through the feature plugins. Core Protect. This is basically an anti-grief plugin. There's lots of anti-grief plugins out there. This one is good. It does require, there's some anti-grief plugins out there that will just be automatic. Someone does something somewhere they shouldn't, it'll revert it back automatically and say, you're not allowed to do that. With Core Protect, it's more reactive instead of proactive. Basically, somebody goes and they grief something, and then the player finds their stuff griefed, and they'll talk to an admin or a mod and say, my house was griefed. So what Core Protect does is it stores all the information for all placed and removed blocks. So the admin or mod can then go up to that place, enable Core Protect, left click on a block, and it'll say when that block was placed, who placed it. Right click on a block, and it'll say when a block was removed, who removed it. So this can get good for when, well, probably shouldn't get into too much detail, but that's basically what it does. But it can get even people who are tricky, if they break into your house, take something inside the house and go out and replace the blocks, Core Protect will show that that person broke a block and then replaced it. Now Essentials. Essentials is just that. It's pretty much essential. It adds a whole magnitude of more control on your server. So many more commands. The /fly command. It adds an economy, which we talked about with Chest Shop, people for buying and selling. It adds literally hundreds of commands. And when we talk about essentials, we'll get into those, as well as the permissions. It gives you warps. It just pretty much does everything. And as it says, it's essentials. It needs to be there. Essentials chat and spawn are two sub portions of essentials. Essentials chat is just out of chat. It's for gives you the tells or your main server chat, and gives you prefixes and suffixes on people's names, which we'll get into later when we talk into permissions X. And essentials spawn helps with you, allowing you to set multiple different spawn points depending on different variables. Now jobs. This is where the economy comes in. Jobs allows players to pick professions. So they can pick to be a lumberjack or a digger or a miner. And you as an admin can set the value that these players are going to get when they do those jobs. So if someone goes out digging sand or dirt, they get a certain amount of money for doing that. Same thing with mining. So this allows them to build up their money, which they can then use to buy items that we're selling in Chess Shop. Or the players are selling, or you can even do with Chess Shop, do an admin shop where admins can sell rare, hard to find items at a severe premium so that players don't just rely on buying stuff. But if they absolutely need it, they can't find it from another player, you might have it in an admin shop. Lockette. What Lockette does is it allows players to place a chest, put a sign on it, and protect that chest to them or anybody else who they list on that sign. That way, if they're out mining somewhere remote and they want to store their ore, they can put down a chest, put a sign on it, lock it down so nobody can steal the items they've put in there. Multiverse Core allows you to create multiple worlds. By default, Bukkit has 3 worlds. Your main world, your neither world, and your end world. With Multiverse Core, you can have multiple ends, multiple neithers, and just multiple regular worlds. You can set up worlds for your survival games. You can set up worlds for creative. I'll go through all that when I look at the Multiverse Core plugin in detail. Permissions X. This is basically your backbone. This is where you can set groups, assign players to groups, and then assign rights to those groups. So whether this group is allowed to have fly, whether this group is allowed to have creative, whether this group is allowed to use warp. It's very powerful and is definitely needed to pretty much manage the permissions for all the other plugins. Simple jail. You may need this, you may not. If you're just playing with your friends, you don't really need a jail. But if you're allowing anybody on your server, if people start acting up, you can throw them in jail. You can set a time, /jail, player name, 30 minutes. They'll go to jail, they'll stay there, they won't be able to do anything until they've served their sentence. So like I said, that depending on how you want to go, you either want that or you don't. Spectate. Again, this is for mods, admins, and if you think somebody is griefing or you think somebody is using X-ray to mine, you can basically spectate them, which basically puts you inside their head. They don't know you're there. You don't have to teleport to them, and then they'll see you, follow them around. Even if you're in Viz, they could bump into you, things like that. This basically puts you into their head. You see what they see through their eyes. So you can then gather evidence to say what this person was doing, how they were doing it, why they were doing it, and have reasons for banning or jailing. Vault. Vault in itself, there's not really much to talk about other than it is a group of APIs, which is basically a group of programs that the other plugins use in order to interact with Bukkit. So Vault itself doesn't do anything that you see, but it does a lot under the hood to allow you to install other plugins that are going to tie into its API libraries to function in the game. World Border, this allows you, it works hand in hand with Multiverse Core in that it allows you to set a border on your world. By default, a Minecraft world will be huge. Well, to start out, it's not huge, but players can just explore as much as they want, as far as they want, and there is no end. The world will just keep generating and generating until it gets huge. With World Border, you can set a limit on the size of the world. So you can go in, you can go to a spot, and you can do /world border /WB, and then a radius. If you want the world to have a radius of 5,000 blocks, you put 5,000. So then it will create the world out to 5. Well, it won't create the world right there, but it will set a border at 5,000 blocks. If a player tries to go beyond that, they'll get bounced back and they'll be warned they're at the end of the world. You can also use World Border to pre-render the world. So as you probably know, if you've been on Bukkit servers, there's lag sometimes. What that can happen is when a whole bunch of people are going to a whole bunch of new areas and your server is generating those new areas. What you can do with World Border is you can go in and you can pre-generate all those areas so that when the player walks in there, there's no real CPU load. All of this is loading the files that have already been rendered. It takes a little while to do it, but before you start your server up, you may want to do that just to limit the amount of lag when players start exploring. World Edit, this is again very powerful, very great for doing large scale building as an admin, setting up your main town, clearing land. The series of commands, we'll get into them, allow you to basically copy and paste things. If you build something somewhere, you want identical somewhere else, you can copy and paste it. You can define a region and then use World Edit to make changes. So you can define a big huge area / set space grass, and it'll make everything that's in your region grass. / set air will delete everything in the region you've defined. Very powerful tool. Be careful when using it. We'll get into that when we get it, because if you make such a huge region and you do something crazy big, it'll crash your server. So you got to be wary when you're using that. And last, World Guard. This basically allows you to do things like prevent fire spread, prevent lava spread, things that griefers will use that are a pain in the ass to clean up. So if they want to just go burn somebody's house down, if you disable fire spread, they can't. If they want to dump lava all over someone's community, if you use World Guard, they can't. So things like that. Basically keep the server running well, keep it running smooth. As I said, there's going to be a lot more plugins out there, and I'll get into some more of them, but these are the main ones I think you should have when your server starts, just to get everything in line. Again, there's things like Locket. Some people like it, some people use other ones, but it's all a matter of personal opinion. What I'm going to do in the future episodes is go through each of these, go through the permissions required for them, as well as go through the config files and just walk you through the config, telling you how I would set it up and giving you some options on where you want to go. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and next episode we'll actually get into the nitty-gritty of configuring these plugins. Lastly, before I leave, I just wanted to show you, basically I downloaded all of these plugins and I threw them in my plugins directory. None of the config folders are here. Basically you have to run your server once. So I'm just going to run my server. Server is going to start up, as you see over here. Bam. Server started up. It created all of these folders. If I go into my permissions X folder, say, there's my config and my permissions.yml. If I open my permissions.yml file, you can see right now, it's pretty straightforward. The default group, things like that. If I go into my essentials, this one's huge. My config for essentials. So many different things. We're going to go through those, go through what you need to know, what you don't need to know, things like that in future. I'm just going to stop the server, and as I stop the server, I'm going to be stopping the video. Once again, hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you at the next video. Until then, take care, and I'm out.